we we feel like really like clear about like it's important for us to like challenge those contradictions. And we do that as queer Black femmes, you know, as a queer Black Latina, and like as feminists, as intersectional practitioners. Why is it that, you know, there are some therapists or BIPOC therapists or therapists who are all about empathy and encouraging their clients to be compassionate, and yet when we in these professional groups, quote unquote, it is nothing, not, it's not even compassionate at all. I mean, it's really dangerous, actually. It becomes a very dangerous place. And we think for us, it's important to like share those truths because we're not the only ones. And it's wild to me, given everything that practitioners have been, I mean, we've all been going through a lot, this pandemic, and now seeing these genocides and this ethnic cleansing, like we're seeing it in real time. And we're holding space for folks that we're working with and supporting. And yet in these spaces, these spaces that are meant to be safe, supposedly for us, they're actually more violent. They're actually, and they're violent, they're judgy, they're like very supremacist, can be very homophobic. And in a lot of ways, it made us feel like we don't have community. And if we're the people that if we're the practitioners and therapists, counselors that people are turning to for support, but we can't be that for each other, like, what does that mean, y'all? Like, what does that mean for like community and collective care? Like, we have to be that for each other. And so, you know, for Sequoia and I, like, this is why we started the podcast. This is why we're trying our best to like be here on IG and creating content for you, because we know that there are a lot of places that are meant for us that aren't really for us. I remember there was a post somebody asked about seeing a client who identifies as pagan and that the therapist is Christian, right? And this isn't this is actually a POC therapist group. And I can't remember which one, but it was like a POC therapist group. So it's not just like Black folks or brown folks, but you know, the spectrum of BIPOC. And for me, I'm always having to take deep breaths because I'm like, okay, here we go. Somebody's going to say this is demonic. Somebody's going to say it's the devil. Somebody's going to talk shit and then try to turn it into a clinical intervention, which to me is the biggest gaslight of all, because like, that's like, so you're like, oh, they worship the devil. Oh, but here's a clinical intervention. And this is why for us, we're really rooted in unlearning and decolonizing your practices, because how do you hold space for somebody when you are already calling their practice demonic? And also, ain't nothing wrong with something being demonic, but you are already judging it through a lens that is not supportive to them. And I think the comments were wild. Like, there were some folks who were like, look, I'm Christian. I see that as a spiritual practice. And it was actually lovely to hear people, how they're holding it, but still nobody really knows how to assess or like, you know, and these are some things we're working on. We'll talk about it a little bit around like what's coming next for RSW, but you know, we know that people are trying their best. What I'm not cool with though, and I'm not willing to tolerate, is the judgment, the Christian supremacy of it, this idea that your religion is better than your clients and that you're more civilized, because that's how it ends up being. Like,
yes.
Oh, that's a, you know, that religion. And it's usually the practices, the spiritual practices that are seen as non-mainstream. So it is like paganism, Santeria, Lukumi, Yoruba, like it's anything that's considered like indigenous, ancestral, that's not quote unquote in a religious institution construct, that gets demonized, that gets judged, that gets like seen as, it's actually the way that people are using the master's tools, like what Audre Lorde reminds us, like, y'all using the colonizers' tools to judge your clients about their spiritual practices. Instead of looking at it as, to me, I see it as a resource. Like, you know how brave and courageous it is to come back and reclaim your ancestral practices, your indigenous wisdom, like to even have a practice of connecting with your ancestors and that feeling, and even thinking about paganism as a very nature-based practice. Like, and all you could do is sit there and think, oh, they believe in the devil. You know, I mean, I'm just saying. So like, I think there's ways that, you know, for us, we've been holding a lot of the hypocrisy, the contradiction, a lot of the ways some therapists and even some spiritual therapists, or they say they're spiritual, really use the colonizers' tools to offer therapy, to offer, like they call it therapy. That's not therapy if you're judging your clients. I don't know how that work is the work that's going to support them if you're sitting there judging them too, like really holding deep judgment for them.